Comprehensive Comic. Beginning of God on Earth. Chapter 11. Nightwind scratched his head in embarrassment and picked up the chainsaw demon. Sorry, forgot to soften your muscles, you try again now. Quote. As he spoke, he manipulated the biological force field, softening the skin of his arm, turning it to the level of an ordinary person. The chainsaw demon glanced hesitantly at Nightwind, and seeing that his gaze was sincere, he tentatively bit down on it. This time its teeth punctured its skin, sucking the blood of the Nightwind. The pure blood contained an astonishing amount of energy, as if the sun's rays had been poured into it. Nightwind's face gradually turned pale, and his eyes calmly spoke. My blood is not given to you for free, this is a contract. I saved you, and you have to fulfill my wish until I have no desire. Nightwind, a contract comparable to the Overlord Clause, is simply written on it that I want you to be a slave. It's just that at this time, the chainsaw demon has no choice, and the chainsaw demon who is holding in his arms has no idea of refusing. Its gaze softened from ferocity to softening, and it especially enjoyed the warm embrace of the night breeze. Its only wish is that someone will hold it. Now that the night wind has fulfilled its wishes, it is willing to fulfill all the wishes of the night wind. A small stream of rain fell on the night wind, but before they really touched him, they slid down the air. Night Wind, staggering to his feet, patted the chainsaw demon's furry head. Although it has a chainsaw handle on it, if you avoid these things, its fur is really soft to the touch, and its belly is comfortable to the touch. Don't suck too much blood, I need to go back. Quote. Wong. It shouldn't be good to call you chainsaw demon, so you'll be called Pochita in the future. Quote. Wow. Wow. A man and a dog chatted, and before the night really fell, they returned to the house of Night Breeze. Vault, I'm back. Quote. The Night Breeze shouted weakly and patted the door. Squeak. The gate opened immediately, and the Spring Field, who had been waiting at the door for a long time, looked at the Night Breeze outside the door with tears in his eyes. She was terrified, it was the first time that Nightwind had come back so late. She didn't know what would have happened to her if he hadn't returned. Where did you run to the wind, how are you in tatters, and your face is so bad? What's going on with this weird-shaped dog? Kasuga no Chong forcibly held back his tears, noticed the night wind's poor face, and immediately reached out to help him into the house. And after sitting down in the house, Kasugano Dome noticed the Pochita he was holding in his hand. A dog and a chainsaw combined, which is strange how to look at the combination. Dome cannot be understood. However, Kasuga no Dome is more concerned about Nightwind's body now, and although there are no wounds visible on his body, he looks really weak. Don't worry, I'm fine, I'm just hungry. Quote. Before the Night Breeze could speak, Kasuga Wild Dome immediately got up and went to the kitchen, and quickly brought out a few plates of dishes that had been hot in the pot. Kasuga Yechong hesitated for a moment and said, this is what I learned to do myself, and it's still hot and windy, so hurry up and eat it. Quote. Originally, she also wore a cool apron today, just to wear it for the night breeze. Thinking of this, a touch of ruddy color instantly surged into his face, and a pink color appeared on his snow-white cheeks. Nightwind didn't notice the change in the dome at the moment, and was trying to stuff vegetables into his mouth. The sun's radiation intake is cut off, and he can now only rely on food to supplement his consumption. A few plates of food quickly went down, and he even ate all the remaining rice in the rice cooker in one go, and his stomach was still very flat. During the meal, Night Breeze would also divide some rice and pieces of meat and throw them to Pochita, who would also accept them all. Wow! Pochita called out happily twice, and her eyes were very surprised. It was the first time it had eaten human food, and it was so delicious that it was delicious. Seeing that a man and a dog in front of him had finished eating the meal they had cooked, Kasuga Wild Dome suddenly became a little hostile to Pochita for some reason. What's the matter with this dog, it's so close to the wind. Nightwind then went to the refrigerator and took out a few bags of bread, ate a slice for himself, and gave Pochita a slice by the way. Watching Pochita's two Ringo-like mouths eating bread slices is really stupid and cute. Its tail was also wagging its loop, and it could be seen that Pochita was in a particularly good mood. Then the night wind chatted with the dome, explaining why he came back so late. Chong, a lot has happened today, all in all, your brother and I are not an ordinary person but a Superman. Quote dot dot. Isn't the wind mentally stimulated? What Superman? The white jade palm of the spring wild dome gently covered the forehead of the night wind, and his eyes looked at the night wind worriedly. Night wind looked at the dome helplessly. Since she didn't believe it, then she didn't have to explain anything. Still, he focused on Pochita. This is Pochita, the demon puppy I picked up. Don't underestimate it, it's very powerful. Wow. Wow. As if to match the night wind, Pochita also called twice, wagging her tail and looking up at Kasagano Dome. Looking at this fierce Pochita, Kasuga Wild Dome can't associate it with the word powerful anyway. Kasuga tried to reach out his hands and pick Pochita up. This chubby body is exceptionally smooth, and Pochita has no organs that normal dogs have. Listening to the cry is biased towards females, but this smooth and flat belly, Kasuga no Dome touches it and only feels that it is the same as a doll. Is it really a demon, a puppy demon? Kasuga Wild Dome couldn't comprehend what was happening in front of him for a moment, and looked at Pochita with his tail wagging in his hand in surprise. Night Wind shook his head, drank a glass of ice water, and said, "It's not a puppy demon, it's a chainsaw demon, and you can call it Pochita in the future." Quote. Pochi. Tower. Wong. Kasuga no Dome called tentatively, and Pochita responded enthusiastically. It can be seen that Pochita's intelligence is not low, or that it is the same as the IQ of a normal person. For having an extra pet at home, Kasuga Wild Dome has no opinion. It's just that she always thinks this Pochita is weird, it's a kind of indescribable strangeness. Nightwind then went to the bathroom, and Kasagano immediately dropped the Pochita in his hand and followed. It was a tradition for the two of them to bathe together, and she had been waiting for this time. Seeing Dome follow, Nightwind only smiled and touched her head. Behind the Dome, Pochita followed with her short legs. When Night Breeze and Kasuga Wild Dome entered the bathtub to take a bath, they jumped into Nightwind's arms. Wong. Okay, I know you're sticking to me, and now I want to hug you. Quote. Nightwind could barely understand what Pochita was saying, and picked it up with a smile. The fluffy Pochita is also quite comfortable to hold, and the experience is very different from the experience of holding the Dome. Kasuga Wild Dome's jealous look, the embrace of the night wind was originally her position. Pochita, if I'm not at home in the future, you have to take good care of the Dome and protect her when I come back. Quote. Wow. Wow. Pochita nodded immediately and called twice. Kasagano Dome had reached over secretly, and the little hand that wanted to pull away Pochita couldn't help but retract it. She could tell that the night wind had brought Pochita back more to protect her. When I came out of the bathroom, it was late. Kasuga Wild Dome walks in front of the night breeze, with a slender and well-proportioned figure and waist, and the curves are so graceful. The only pity is that her branches are not fruitful, but green. When she changed into a translucent silk pajamas and walked over with her wet hair, Night Breeze's heart suddenly fluttered. Her hair, which was still dripping with water, fell down her chest casually. The delicate snow-white collarbones and curvatures emit a white shimmer under the illumination of the light. Every drop of water across the white skin is so clearly visible, as if it has just been picked fruit. How's the wind? How are these pajamas? Noticing the fiery eyes of the night wind, Kasuga Yechong couldn't help but blush. Instead of being shy, the Dome tried to stand up and draw a great arc. She seemed to want to prove that she had grown up. Night Breeze stared at it for a long time, and suddenly came back to its senses as Pochita shook off the droplets of water from her body. Ahem, when did you change your pajamas? It's beautiful. Quote. He coughed, but didn't look away. The spring wild Dome that was watched by the night breeze, even the snow-white skin on his body was slightly red. Even though the night wind's gaze was like a devouring beast, Kasuga Wild Dome did not feel bored, but was unexpectedly happy. Because before that, Night Wind's sight had never been so hot. Kasuga Wild Chong smiled charmingly and whispered, "Are you excited?" Phew. 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 In the silence of the night, the sound of breathing between the two is also clearly visible. The distance between the two is getting closer and closer. The slender willow waist does not have the slightest fat, and the strength in the hand of the night wind can't help but weaken, for fear that he will break it with a little force. Kasuga no Dome also felt the heat of the night wind, and the hot temperature was even hotter than ever. And his muscles were much stronger, and she vaguely understood what night wind meant by turning into Superman. Nightwind has gotten stronger and more reliable than before. Chong, maybe don't wait until your next birthday. Quote. It's okay, Wind, whatever you like. Quote. The spring water in the eyes of the spring field is deeper than the night wind, and the emotions that are no longer suppressed gush out like a volcanic eruption. Wong. Pochita looked at the two of them suspiciously, and whispered twice. Unfortunately for Nightwind and Dome, both of them completely ignored poor Pochita. It could only watch as they walked into the bedroom. On this night, Pochita, as a chainsaw demon, learned for the first time about the deeper things of humanity. Night Breeze clung to the sleeping Dome in his arms and lay on the bed. Pochita lay on her stomach, curled up and falling into a deep sleep. It's not been too long, it's only an hour. It's not my own reason, after all, it's really an iron body now. If it weren't for the awakening of the biological force field and the help of regulating the strength of his body, then Nightwind would never dare to attack the firmament. I'm still not very sleepy, so I'm just taking the time to study my golden finger. Quote. The night breeze will caress the silver-white hair of the firmament, sinking its mind into itself. The panel's warehouse only has 10 spaces, and can only hold a total of 10 different abilities. If you want to store more later, you need to unlock it yourself. 1000 energy points to unlock 1 square, which is still too expensive for me at the moment, and not worth it. Transformation, collection, integration. Quote. Nightwind fumbled for a while, and really found other uses for the panel. Transformation is the ability to convert the stored ability into energy points. For example, the useless organ ability Bat Wing, which can transform into 200 energy points. And after the transformation, this ability is completely gone. Inclusion is to consume the current ability and record it on the ability map. As long as you record it in the ability atlas, you can spend energy points to buy the abilities on the atlas if you want it later. As the name suggests, fusion is divided into 2 types. One is to merge this ability with himself, and the other is to merge the 2 abilities with each other. In the case of the former, Nightwind tried, and although the super sense of smell is an organ ability, it does not cause the body to grow strange things. After the fusion, his sense of smell became unusually acute. The faint fragrance of the dome was mixed with the smell of heather, and the slightest smell of blood, and he could smell it all just by smelling it. Where it hurts, or what it smells like to the person who hurt her, she can smell it at a glance. Although this is not to be heard. I also know who got it. The latter fusion is the fusion between abilities, and 2 abilities can be fused into 1. The result of fusion is unknowable, and if the 2 are well compatible, they may give birth to extremely powerful abilities. If the phase is not good, the result may be that 2 abilities are annihilated by each other, or a garbage ability is born. There should be ununlocked functions in the future, and it is estimated that it will take a lot of energy points to upgrade the panel. Quote. Before going to bed, Nightwind glanced at his stats panel. Name: Nightwind Kasuga Wild Wind. Race: Human, Kryptonian. Talents: Energy Absorption, Iron Body, Super Strength, Super Speed. Thermal Vision, you can use your eyes to shoot a red high-temperature beam of light converted by the energy stored in your body. Bio-Force Field, you can control your own bio-force field to make flying, that violates the laws of physics and so on. Power Points: 700. The heat vision is awakened, but unfortunately there is still no solar energy left in the body. Quote. After a big battle, he was sucked by Pochita, and now he has another, big war. Being able to get up and not fall asleep right away already shows how strong he is. Fighting also seems to increase strength, but it doesn't come as quickly as the sun. In terms of time, I can only be regarded as a newborn Kryptonian baby. If it weren't for the fact that the body was already an adult, it is estimated that the sun would not have lifted so quickly. Quote. The Superman in the body of steel has been basking in the sun for more than 20 years before he can start the speed of sound and pull a 10,000-ton ship with his bare hands. Let's work hard in the sun, and then save enough energy points to go to other worlds to speed up the evolution. Quote. For his current strength, Nightwind is still not very satisfied. Thinking about the demons that may appear in the future, what worries him the most is that the dominant demon Makima has come to the door. After all, he picked up a Pochita and came back, and if that girl knew about it, she would definitely not let herself go. Even if you don't really face the horror of dominating demons, Nightwind is quite clear. If her strength is not strong enough, she may end up becoming one of her dogs. He doesn't want to be a dog, he just wants others to be his dog. When the night breeze opened its eyes again, it was already dawn. Because the curtains were not drawn, the morning sun sprinkled on him without reservation. Dome. Nightwind instinctively touched his side and found that the dome was not in his arms. He snapped his eyes open, his gaze swept around, and quickly relaxed. There was a sound of cooking in the kitchen, and it seemed that the dome was cooking. Why is it that my motherhood has become so big that I used to cook for her, and this change is too big? Quote. The night breeze muttered and patted Pochita in his arms. Wow! Pochita, who woke up leisurely, immediately called out twice with joy. Nightwind then stretched out his hands and gave it a good morning hug, fulfilling Pochita's wish. Pochita, with a satisfied face, stretched out her little tongue and licked the cheeks of the night breeze. After some frolicking, Night Breeze put on his shirt, washed his face and went to the living room. Chong, you don't usually have much energy, why are you suddenly working hard all of a sudden? Night Breeze sat at the dining table and smiled at the kitchen. Kasuga's angry voice immediately came out. What are these words, how can I usually be so lazy? Quote. After a few moments, she walked out of the kitchen with a bowl of porridge and a few side dishes. Although most of the food is frozen this morning, I will try to make more delicious food in the future, and catch up with your level. Quote. Before Nightwind could hear the dome's words, he turned his head to look in her direction. Her dress suddenly made the night breeze drinking boiling water almost choked. At this moment, in addition to a white fat body, there is only an apron on the whole body. The two snow-white long legs are very conspicuous, and the blue sandals on the feet show the delicate and lovely, like round pearl-like toes. The skin outside the apron was white and glowing, without the slightest blemish, like a handicraft. Night Breeze saw it, and suddenly both heads were bigger. I don't know if it's the reason for opening the heart, or if it's some strange switch. The dome seems to be getting bolder and more seductive. It's just that the person who seduces is the only one. Noticing the change in the night wind's vision, the corners of his mouth were slightly raised, his eyes were full of autumn water, and his expression was indescribably charming. Putting down the plate in his hand, Kasuga Wild Dome sat directly in the arms of Night Wind. The graceful flesh exudes a youthful and lively atmosphere, and the close-fitting apron almost outlines the curves of the body. This scene is somewhat unbearable. Nightwind tried to withdraw his hand, but his own hands were a little disobedient. I'm a good boy, Wind. Quote. Kasuga Wild Dome turned his head to the side of Nightwind's cheek and asked softly. Nightwind nodded dumbly and said, Quote. After receiving the response of the Night Wind, Kasuga Wild Dome immediately raised his head. Then I want a reward. Looking at the thin lips in front of him, Nightwind bowed his head and gave the dome the reward he wanted. I don't know how long it took, but seeing that the atmosphere was not quite right, Pochita called out, interrupting their lingering. Smack. Nightwind took 2 deep breaths, suppressed the anger in his heart and said. Chong, I still have to go to school, don't make a fuss. Quote. I see, then I'm going to eat my breakfast too. Quote. As he spoke, he slipped under the table and picked up the milk that had fallen on the floor and drank it. The night breeze on the table looked at Pochita as she ate the food on her plate. Seeing that the time was getting late, Nightwind broke free from the dome's grasp. Chong, have you seen something you shouldn't see? Nightwind couldn't help but let out an accusation, feeling that he needed to take control of the dome computer. It's the first time, why are you so skilled? Faced with the accusation of the night wind, Kasuga Wild Dome just took a sip and swallowed the food in his mouth. This action instantly made Night Wind shut his mouth, not daring to say anything more. The dome is like this, and if you rebuke something, wouldn't you be ignorant of lifting? Night Breeze returns to the bedroom and takes out the Nano Superman suit given by the newbie pack and puts it on. Just by touching the suit, his mind was linked to the nanoparticles of the suit. The Nano Superman suit attached to his body like flowing water, and eventually transformed into a black shirt with a scarlet S on its chest. The function of this suit was also immediately introduced into Nightwind's brain, and he immediately looked happy. The Nano Superman suit can not only change the style of clothes according to his heart. The material strength of the nanosuit alone is enough to withstand the strafing of heavy machine gun bullets. In addition, the Nano-Superman suit also assists itself in absorbing sunlight, filtering kryptonite, better conducting biological force fields, and releasing electromagnetic waves to shield monitoring, and so on. This is really a very strong battle suit equipment, and the Night Breeze is reluctant to take it off after wearing it. Put on his pants, and Night Breeze went out directly in this shirt and shirt. Seeing Night Breeze come out in a Superman shirt, Dome, who cleaned up the dishes, was quite surprised. When did you hide the clothes in the wind? Why haven't I seen them before? What kind of clothes the Night Breeze wears, even if it is underwear, the spring while Dome has a few pieces, what style and pattern? And the black shirt with a strange pattern in front of her, she had never seen it before. Faced with the curiosity of the Dome, Nightwind just smiled and replied. It's a secret, and this dress is something I got recently. Quote. For the so-called secret in the mouth of the Night Wind, Kasuga while Dome didn't think too much. I just thought it was the same as my translucent silk pajamas, and I bought it on purpose. And looking at the muscle outline outlined by Superman's shirt, Kasuga's eyes were a little confused. Seeing that the situation was not good, Nightwind immediately changed the subject and said, Chong, do you want to go to school? Hearing about going to school, Kasuga Nodome's mood quickly calmed down. She shook her head and replied unhappily, I don't want to go, I don't want to see anyone other than the wind. Quote. Ah, still, I thought you'd change in that regard. Quote. Nightwind sighed, he actually wanted to make the Dome more cheerful and get in touch with other people. The current situation of the Dome is her whole world. Although he didn't hate it, it was because he really loved the Dome that he wanted the Dome world to have some other brilliance. But the Nightwind is not forced, his mentality is still very stable, just let it be. In that case, I'm leaving, Pochita, stay at home, don't come out with you. Nightwind then said goodbye to the Dome, and when he saw Pochita, who wanted to follow him at the door, Nightwind immediately gave an order. The aggrieved Pochita could only sit on the ground with her eyes wide open and obediently wagging her tail. After the Night Breeze went out, Kasuga Yechong's expression suddenly fell a lot lonely. Wind, come back quickly. Kasagano muttered and looked down at Pochita at his feet. After some thought, she beckoned Pochita into the house. Pochita, you should understand me, right? Quote. Wow. Pochita nodded, and Kasagano smiled as he pulled out one of the gamepads and handed it to him. Then Pochita, you can play 2 games with me now. Quote. Looking at the gamepad in front of him, Pochita looked at his little short legs. It looked at Kasagano with a speechless look, and its face suddenly fell. You're embarrassing me, Pochita, and letting me use my little claws against your men, aren't you? Ah. The Night Breeze came to the tram stop unhurriedly and chose the tram to be handed over to the school. Originally, there was plenty of time, but being bitten and dragged by the Dome was not enough. If you take the train, you will be able to walk faster than if you take it slowly. The Night Breeze that came to the tram clenched his fists, and since wearing this suit, it has been much more efficient in absorbing sunlight. He could clearly feel that his strength was growing much faster than yesterday. Yesterday's battle should have been in the news, I should have been discovered, why didn't anyone come looking for me? Watching the TV on the train broadcast the news of yesterday's destruction of the road in the suburbs of Sakuragaoka, Night Breeze couldn't help but mutter. He was ready to be approached, but the situation was different from what he had imagined. And the public security team, although they knew about the existence of Night Wind, only regarded it as an ordinary transcendent. Judging by the destruction at the scene, they prefer to believe that it was Chiyoda Momo who killed the Bat Demon. And Chiyoda Momo is a famous magical girl, a high-level transcendent who has been recorded. At present, the world is divided into 3 classes. The most common level is the transcendent, which is divided into 3 levels: elementary, intermediate, and high. The first level is the initial contact with transhuman events, with the existence of non-human powers. The division of the middle level: if you are a magician, you must be proficient in magic, not a newcomer; if you are a knight, then you must be a formal knight, and you have the power to ride 1,000. High-level transcendents, at this stage, are gradually out of control, at least they have the power to easily destroy the block. The higher levels are more vague, and they can be called great magicians, great knights, and the like. However, there is a collective term among countries, and that is disaster level. Their existence is a disaster, and they have the power to change a country. Above this are demigods, beings who are truly above the world. At present, even if there is a record, it is absolutely confidential and cannot be known to outsiders. Therefore, the public security monster team under the Neon Extraordinary Management Bureau did not want to investigate this matter in depth. In recent years, there have been a lot more demonic incidents than ever before, and there are not too many people to investigate every demonic incident. Anyway, now that the demon has been eliminated, there is less follow-up cumbersome work to conclude the case hastily. Night Wind, who didn't know about this situation, didn't take it to heart. His confidence comes from his own strength, and under normal circumstances, he can't really kill him without using missiles, heavy weapons, and the like now. Buzz. Wobbling in the car for a moment, before reaching the next stop, the Night Wind suddenly felt a ringing in the ears. To be precise, it was not tinnitus, but the sound of 100 meters in an instant. The sound of a car engine starting, the sound of people walking, talking, hiccups, playing games, watching TV. All sorts of sounds echoed in my ears. All the noisy sounds mixed together and amplified tens, hundreds of times. At this time, Night Wind's brain couldn't process such information at all, and the whole person was so uncomfortable that he almost crushed the iron rod he was holding. This ideographic comma, this is super hearing. There was a precursor to awakening yesterday. Today I woke up directly after absorbing a lot of solar radiation. Night Wind gritted his teeth and forcibly controlled himself from falling and going berserk. He gradually controlled the conduction of sounds in his ears, and began to quickly process and ignore unnecessary noises. It's just that here he concentrates on controlling his hearing, and his super sense of smell is a little out of control. Countless smells poured into the nostrils, and the night breeze was almost not smoked out by the stench that had been amplified countless times in the bus. Vomit. Retching twice, the Night Wind still suppressed the tumbling in his stomach. That, classmate, are you alright? Night Wind smelled a faint fragrance on the tip of his nose, and when he opened his eyes, a dull hair appeared in front of him. When he looked down, he saw the person who had just shouted to him. She wears a neat school uniform, and her body is well proportioned and graceful. A short brown hair spreads out, and a dull hair stands on end in front of his eyes. The black eyes are extremely bright, and the facial features of a cute baby face are very delicate, exuding the temperament of a small jasper. Isn't this the world of Cyanji Temple at your own front table? This face is really similar to the beautiful young woman I saved yesterday. It's just that the figure of the Shuan Temple world is more immature. Compared with the plump and graceful, the Shuan Temple Odori, which exudes the breath of a young woman, is still more than a star and a half behind. And this youthful and wonderful, cute and innocent girlish temperament and untouched simplicity are also particularly fascinating. It's all tempted by the dome. Why now when I see a beautiful girl, my heart is full of these things. Night Wind quickly shook his head and suppressed all the strange thoughts that appeared in his mind. I don't know if it's the change in the dome that has attracted the demon in him. It was the change in his own strength that made him break free from the shackles of morality. Now his thoughts are becoming more and more perverted, and he thinks about it at a glance at the other party. And the world of Shuan Temple, which didn't know the inner thoughts of the Night Wind, looked at the Night Wind with a pale face worriedly. She still has a great impression of the handsome Night Breeze at her back table with a particularly good figure. Especially when compared to the other boys in the class, the gap is even greater. This may be what I saw in romance novels and comics, the heart-warming feeling of spring heart budding and Prince Charming. After approaching the Night Wind's chest, touching his strong chest muscles and abs, the world of Shuan Temple was even more unsettled. The little heart is pounding, and the little hands come and go, just want to sneak it. Her small movements were naturally seen by the Night Wind, and then she spoke. Cyanji-san, I'm fine, but I'm a little uncomfortable with the train. Quote. The sound of the Night Wind woke up the world of Cyanji Temple. She blushed and withdrew her little hand, unable to answer for a while. But soon she sorted out her emotions, returned to her usual big grin, smiled cheerfully, and invited. Then you can sit next to me, just wait for me to get out of the car. Quote. The world of Shuan Temple is still very nervous inside, and it is not as cheerful as it seems. She had already done her best to say this, and she regretted it as soon as she said it. She couldn't believe how embarrassed she would be if Nightwind refused. And if you open your mouth so rashly, will the other party think that she is a very casual girl? The heart of the Cyan-G world suddenly became a mess, and his eyes looked nervously at the night breeze. Nightwind could see the tension of the world of Cyan-G, whether it was smell or hearing, and could detect her eagerness and worry, fear. It's a strange feeling, but you can hear it and smell it. Thank you, Cyan-G-san, if you don't mind, then I'll sit down. Quote. The night breeze showed a sunny smile, and his gentle gesture was like a reassurance to the world of Xuan Temple. I wasn't hated, and the other party accepted my kindness. She couldn't help but breathe a long sigh of relief, and at the same time a little gratitude welled up in her heart. Just as he and she moved out of their positions, ready to let Yi Feng sit down, Yi Feng's face changed slightly and suddenly spoke. I'm sorry to wait a minute, a friend of mine seems to be in trouble, so I'm going to help her. Quote. As he spoke, Nightwind walked quickly towards the aisle on the left, his expression cold and exuding a hint of murderous intent. The world of Xuan Temple saw the anxiety of the night wind, hesitated for a second and immediately followed. Nearby passers-by glanced at where Night Breeze had just stood. The iron rod of the handrail was almost pinched into a patch, and a palm print was clearly visible. 10 seconds away, the Night Breeze came to the next carriage. His gaze swept to the side, and Gui Yanye, who was wearing a school uniform similar to the Xuan Temple world, was sitting on the seat of the train with a book in his hand. Gui Yanye was looking at the book intently, not paying attention to the eyes of the people around him. The gangsters who were ordered by the gang to collect white money and loan sharks suddenly had bad thoughts in their hearts when they saw Gui Yanye sitting on Wen Jing's seat. It's really good luck today, this girl is very weak at first glance, and she should be able to get started with a little threat. Quote. Although this is in public, but I just simply went over to talk to him, and no one would do anything to him. With this in mind, he walked towards Gui Yanye. But before he could take a few steps, a hand was placed on his shoulder. The thugs immediately frowned, turned their heads unhappily and scolded, who dares to touch, mess around. Before he could finish speaking, Nightwind grabbed his chin with a single hand. The cold eyes almost made him pee his pants. Maybe it's the change in Nightwind's mentality after hammering the bat demon to death yesterday. Even if he really wants to kill someone, he will never be relentless. The icy murderous aura poured out with the thoughts of the night wind, making the legs of the gangsters who had experienced several gang fights tremble. Not only because of the fleeting murderous aura, but also because the palm of the night wind was like an iron tong, pinching his chin and making him unable to breathe. Get me out of here. Nightwind didn't say anything else to the thug, just gave him an order and threw him to the ground. The thug who felt that his jawbones were crushed nodded again and again, and he didn't dare to complain and leave the carriage immediately. Nightwind silently noted down the man's scent and appearance, ready to go back and trouble him again. His strength is not strong enough to kill in public, and now he is still willing to follow the rules of the law, at least on the surface. Wind. The series of events just now also made Gui Yanye put down the book. She looked at Nightwind in surprise, and there was a hint of surprise in her tone. Originally, her mother was in charge of picking up and dropping off today, but she didn't know what was going on, so she refused and chose to take the tram again. After getting on the tram, she looked around, and she didn't see the night breeze, and she looked at the book with some loss. Unexpectedly, the night breeze actually came from other carriages, which really surprised her. Yo, we'll meet again, Gui-san. Quote. Night breeze nodded slightly, and pulled the Xuan Temple world to sit down beside Gui Yanye. Then Yefeng introduced. This is also my classmate, and he is in the same class as me, called Xuan Temple world. Quote. Hello Gui-san. Quote. When the night breeze said this, the world of Xuan Temple came to its senses and instinctively replied. She was still shocked by the scene where Nightwind had just subdued the thug with her bare hands. That figure is really handsome, and it's very secure. During this time, the world was not at peace, not because of war, but because of the increase in supernatural events. This has led to the revival of gangsters and other organizations that had disappeared. She had met a few times before, but at that time she was with her best friend. Seeing the other party approaching, the Xuan Temple world scolded, and the other party did not dare to approach in public. Afterwards, Gui Yanyi and the world of Xuan Temple chatted. When he first saw the world of Xuan Temple, Gui Yanyi was still a little timid, and instinctively shrunk back. However, the world of Xuan Temple is to open its mouth and communicate generously, narrowing the distance between the two sides. For the world of Xuan Temple, Gui Yanyi's eyes were particularly envious. From her personality, you can see that the popularity of the Xuan Temple world is better than herself, and she is more of a dislike to others. Thinking about it, Gui Yanyi's hands couldn't help but touch his chest. The proud body curves and breasts made her quite targeted in the class. This made her feel a little inferior, and she tried to bow her body as much as possible, otherwise they would see it from the night wind in the world of Xuan Temple. Xuan Temple classmates in Fengjun, you should be very popular with others. Quote. Gui Yanyi looked at the two of them enviously and couldn't help whispering. Her voice was so small that the world of Xianji didn't hear it clearly. And the night breeze is clearly heard, and it was just when I heard the sound here that I came this way. I can't say that my words are popular, and there are not many people who can really be called friends, of course, you are all in the world. Quote. Nightwind dragged his chin and thought for a moment, and said to Gui Yanyi with a smile. When the world of Xuan Temple heard the Nightwind say this, it immediately knew what Gui Yanyi was muttering just now. She also saw that Gui Yanyi's personality was a little cowardly, and immediately echoed. That's right, we're friends now, and classmate Gui, you're in such a good shape, I'm very envious. As the world of Xuan Temple spoke, he stretched out his little white hand and grabbed it in the void, and his smiling appearance made Gui Yanyi embarrassed. Although Gui Yanyi tried his best to hide, anyone could see the two advantages of such a big one. What the world of Xuan Temple said is not false, she is really envious. My mother is obviously not small, but why does she look so remnants? It can't be said to be very small, it can only be said to be a normal person's level. For Gui Yanyi, who far surpasses the level of her peers, she has a little inferiority. Being said by the night breeze in the world of Xuan Temple, Gui Yanyi's inner tension also relaxed, and he began to say something from his heart. In fact, from elementary school to high school, I was the oldest in the class, and then I was always ridiculed and bullied. Quote. Gui Yanyi said, and the Xuan Temple world looked down at him in embarrassment. And the conversation was hot, and this scene made the boy sitting on the other side of the tram very jealous. Makoto, I didn't expect this guy to be so popular outside the class. Taisuke, don't talk too loudly, you don't remember that he just grabbed that person with one hand. Quote. Makoto Ito heard his friend talking loudly about the night breeze in his seat, and immediately stopped him. Taisuke Sawanaga, who had a flirtatious face, suddenly lowered his voice, and his eyes showed a hint of fear. Seeing that the guy in the night breeze chatting so happily with the two beautiful girls, the jealousy in his heart almost made him dizzy. The two of them had been paying attention to Gui Yanyi, a beautiful girl, but when the gangster came over just now, they were so scared that they didn't dare to say anything. The two immediately lowered their voices and chatted, and Ito's eyes peeked at Gui Yanyi, who was intimate with the night breeze, from time to time. Just at first sight, he fell in love with this girl, she looked like an angel, and her temperament was gentle and lovely. Even if she wears a conservative school uniform, you can see how great her figure is. He couldn't help but take out his phone and wanted to secretly take a picture in front of the tram stop. Nightwind noticed Makoto Ito's small movements, and his eyes narrowed slightly and his cold gaze swept towards the two of them. And the depths of his pupils also lit up with a faint red light. Being so attentive that Ito didn't notice the night breeze looking at him. Only Taisuke Sawanaga was so frightened by the night wind's gaze that he didn't dare to gasp, so he could only stretch out his hand to remind his good brother. Makoto Ito, who was shaken by Taisuke Sawanaga, looked dazed and replied casually, "Don't disturb me, Taisuke." Quote. As soon as the words fell, the clamshell machine in his hand suddenly became hot. In the next second, before Ito Makoto threw the phone out, the phone exploded. Bang! The violent explosion frightened the others present. The exploding mobile phone directly blew up Makoto Ito and Taisuke Sawanaga beyond recognition, and they fell unconscious to the ground. Gui Yanye and the world of Xuan Temple were also taken aback, reached out and grabbed Yi Feng's arm, and looked at the two people not far away in shock. What's going on? Did they bring bombs? The world of Xianji said in a panic. Hearing the word bomb, the people in the carriage also became agitated. At this time, the tram also stopped, and everyone rushed down and quickly left the place. Nightwind also used his hands to protect Gui Yanye and the two of them in the Xuan Temple world, and took them off the tram. After the staff arrived at the scene to check, they thought that the quality of the mobile phone was not good and exploded. If it was a real bomb, it wouldn't have killed people at such close range. Just looking at the two people who were unrecognizable, the staff who called the ambulance were also embarrassed. What age do you still use a clamshell machine? It seems that you are a student with little money, but does this kind of clamshell opportunity explode? Who knows? This face is burned piece by piece. Tisk, I can't let my wife and children use this brand of mobile phone in the future. The ambulance also arrived quickly, and the chatting staff immediately carried the unconscious two people into the car. The three of them, who had already come to the vicinity of the school, quickly forgot about what happened on the tram before. Night Breeze said goodbye to the two of them for the time being, and went to the store near the school to buy some things. Walking on the way to the store, the Night Breeze is a sunny smile on his face. The power of the thermal line of sight is not bad, and the invisible thermal line of sight can also ignite and detonate other objects. If the temperature is raised again, it will be a substantiated laser ray, which can cut the human body. Quote. It was an experiment just now, and he couldn't use a real thermal vision yet. The solar energy reserves in his body are too small, and the intensity of the current heat line of sight is not enough to be visible to the naked eye. On the contrary, such an invisible and shadowless hot sight is the most lethal when it kills people. Originally, he wanted to directly burn Makoto Ito and Taisuke Sawanaga into charcoal with a hot sight. But on second thought, it would be too cheap for them to die like this. As the brain develops more and more, the more you can remember about them, Nightbreeze will know by heart. This doesn't torture them hundreds of times, but simply killing them is completely unrelatable. I was still thinking about how to torture the other party's Nightwind, so I came to the store near the school and bought all the textbooks and tools. And while passing by a snack shop, he stopped. Half a month ago, there was no such snack shop here. It's just that it was newly built during that time, and he knows the female owner of the store. I was also called by the other party to help at the beginning. Is this lazy woman still sleeping now? The door was open, but there was no clerk watching. There was a cardboard box at the door, and it was written that I would put the change in it after I finished shopping. I have to say that this woman is really lazy, no wonder no one wants it until now. Night Breeze took away a few bags of snacks and didn't give money, just as the last time he called for the cost of moving in the past. What do you say about kissing as a reward? Am I so easy to fool? Night Breeze, who was eating a snack, muttered as he arrived at class in the last few minutes. For the few boys left in the class, 2 boys were absent, and everyone immediately discussed. Night Breeze also listened carefully to the teacher's lecture for the first time in a long time, and found that it had become so simple that he couldn't understand things at all. Complex mathematical formulas have become extremely easy, and even just need to be read once. Later, Nightwind didn't go to the lecture anymore, so he simply flipped through the textbook by himself. At the end of a class, when leaving the classroom, Hiratsuka Jing glared fiercely at the Night Breeze who was reading by himself. Watching math, geography, in your own class except for the first few minutes of listening, the rest of the time is looking at something. For such contempt for teachers and classes, Hiratsuka feels that it is her responsibility to correct this student. The Night Breeze that was still unfinished didn't notice Hiratsuka's gaze at all. In one class, he had already memorized all the contents of all the courses in the first half of the first semester of the first year of high school. For the first time, I felt that learning and reproduction were as wonderful as major events, and I was able to go back to the library to see it. Quote. After muttering, Nightwind glanced at Yuko Yoshida, who was lying on the table not far away. She is still so weak, it seems that the power of the dark bloodline has not yet awakened. Have you learned all the lessons? A beautiful female voice suddenly sounded, and when the Night Breeze turned her head, she realized that it was Megumi Kato staring at her. That cute pretty face was full of curiosity, and Megumi Kato, who had been looking at the night breeze, could see that the night breeze was serious just now. It is precisely because of this that she was surprised by the other party's learning ability. Night breeze nodded slightly, without meaning to hide it. Because of some adventures, my brain has become more sensitive recently. Quote. He nodded his head with a sighing expression. This kind of appearance makes Megumi Kato think that he is so interesting. How can he say that he was stupid before? Then the night wind changed his words and said to her with a smile, Kato-san, you are still the same as before. It is difficult for people to find. You are better than me in this regard. I always feel like you're mocking me. I don't want this kind of power. Quote. Megumi Kato pursed her lips in dissatisfaction, and as the world of Cyanji approached, their conversation was interrupted. Cyanji World looked at Megumi Kato in surprise and said in shock, I found out for the first time that there were still people here. The next moment, she realized the problem in her words and quickly explained, I didn't mean forehead. As he spoke, the world of Cyanji said that he was stuck. And Megumi Kato doesn't mind. After all, she has experienced too many things like this. And not far away, the short Chingpu watched silently for a moment. Although she is a childhood sweetheart in the world of Cyanji, she has no idea of wanting to get close to the night wind. It's not that I hate each other, it's just that I just have an inferiority complex. Compared with the rest of the class, she was a little shorter than them and her figure was as flat as an elementary school girl, and her mood became more and more depressed. At this time, the world of Shuon Temple, which was very arrogant, did not notice the emotional changes of his best friend. Her mind was only on Nightwind now, and she talked about Gui Yanye she met this morning. Gui, she's in class A next door, so you should like her, right? The world of Shuon Temple looked like a good buddy, stabbed him with his elbow, and said with a grin. The topic here aroused the curiosity of Megumi Kato. She watched in silence, listening carefully to the topic. Nightwind immediately gave her a blank look, and replied casually, so what? Hee, didn't I become friends with Gui anymore? I can create opportunities for you. The world of Cyanji said what he thought, and he looked like he was going to send an assist. Create opportunities. Hearing the world of Shuon Temple say this, Nightwind always felt that she would be stabbed to death by her. I always think there's something wrong with what you said about creating opportunities, but whatever you want, as long as you don't think about stabbing me to death when the time comes. Quote. Nightwind replied with a salty face, staring at the dead fish's eyes as if he had seen through everything. Why stab you to death? I wouldn't do it, anyway, if you say so, I'll take you by default. Quote. The world of Shuon Temple said excitedly, and suddenly made a plan in his heart. After the second class, she rushed out of the classroom, and it seemed that she was looking for Gui Yanye. Night Breeze tidied up his things and walked out of the classroom. He didn't go to the cafeteria for lunch, but basked in the sun and walked in the direction of the mountain behind the academy. Since you can kill enemies to loot abilities or gain power points, killing insects should also count. Quote. The number of insects is the largest, and if the ability is amplified to an individual, it is also a top horror. It was precisely because of this idea that he was ready to go to the mountain behind the school to find a more remote and hidden place to try. As they passed by the playground, Nightwind heard a burst of laughter. Wow, what a small person, is she really a high school student? Yes, I feel like an elementary school student. Did I go to the wrong school? When I followed the sound, I saw that the boys from the two classes were pointing at Chingpu for an instant, and let out bursts of laughter. Kyora's height is even smaller than Yuko Yoshida. Petite and flat, he looks like a schoolboy from a distance. Compared with the people around him, Chingpu Sasha is really conspicuous. Chingpu is also very concerned about his height. Hearing the laughter of the two boys, he immediately lowered his head with low self-esteem, tears rolling in his eyes. Nightwind frowned slightly, and went up and shouted, how did you speak? Hurry up and apologize. How old are you? What are you shouting? A boy of this age is already young and vigorous. Hearing someone yelling at them, the two immediately looked behind them with unhappy expressions. It's just that as soon as they turned their heads, the Nightwind's fierce gaze came over. The originally unhappy expressions of the two instantly converged and became exceptionally clear and kind. The short-sleeved shirt highlights the muscular silhouette of the night breeze better. The height of 1 meter 8 or 9 makes this muscle more oppressive, and the two boys in front of him are like two bamboo poles. They booed instantly, and they moved their steps and wanted to leave directly. Seeing that they wanted to run without opening their mouths, Nightwind reached out and grabbed the wrist of one of them. You guy thinks we're afraid of you, right? Ah. Seeing his friend caught by the night breeze, another boy kicked his foot sideways in his heart. Nightwind slapped it backhand. Smack. A crisp sound was heard. The boy who wanted to raise his foot and kick the Nightwind fell to the ground on the spot. My brain was buzzing and I only felt that I had been slammed with a heavy hammer, and I almost fell unconscious. The boy who was caught by the night breeze saw this, and admitted it on the spot without saying a word. Big brother, I was wrong, brother, you, don't hit me. Tanaka looked at Matsumoto lying on the ground in horror, and his whole body was frightened. Nightwind shook his hand casually, threw him on the ground, pointed to Chinku who was stunned next to him and said in an instant, don't apologize to me, you have to apologize to Chinku. Quote. I'm so sorry, we're just looking at you. Anyway, please forgive me. Quote. The three words, small, choked directly in Tanaka's throat and couldn't spit it out. He immediately changed his rhetoric, knelt down and kowtowed to apologize. Chinku had never seen this battle in an instant, and waved his hand again and again to get them up. Relieved, Tanaka immediately grabbed his friend and left the place immediately. The people next to him didn't dare to approach. This is a proper bullying scene, how can anyone dare to approach? You're a friend of the world. Chinku is instantaneous, right, you're pretty cute when you're small, there's no need to cry when you say it. Quote. If anyone laughs at you, you can come to me, I can do you a little favor. Quote. The night breeze showed a sunny smile, trying to ease Chinku's mood for a moment. Chinku, who came back to his senses, stared blankly at the night wind for a few seconds. The pear blossom with rain looks like a blooming flower, petite and delicate. On the cheeks, which were as white as snow and soft and delicate, a seductive flush suddenly appeared. She opened her lips and replied stubbornly, I won't rely on anyone, no, I don't need your help. However, her clenched little pink fist and the tears flashing in her eyes made her words seem very weak. Kiora-san, you're very strong. Regarding Chinku's instantaneous response, Nightwind only echoed it. And when the Nightwind said this, Chinku was stunned. Strong. Seeing the timid Nightwind in Chinku's heart for a moment, he chuckled. On the surface, it's very strong, but if you live by it, don't just talk about it. Quote. I'm not just going to talk about it, I'm going to be strong on my own. Being so agitated by the night breeze, Chinku instantly retorted, and his mood recovered from the depression just now. Seeing that it was almost over, Nightwind was not ready to continue to stay here, and said casually. In that case, let me see, goodbye now, I have something to do. After saying that, he left without looking back, and he had to hurry up and kill some insects to see if the panel had any effect. Watching the night breeze leave, Chinku instantly let go of his fist, and his lips opened slightly and whispered, thank you. Are you okay? I just heard that someone is bullying here. The world of Cyanji Temple also came over at this time, and looked nervously at Chinku instantly. Chinku shook his head in an instant, and made a V gesture and said, I'm okay with the world. Quote. Hearing Chinku say this instantly, the world of Xuan Temple breathed a sigh of relief. Then she squirmed a little and asked in a low voice, at that moment, I saw that Fengjun seemed to be going this way, did you see others? Chinku immediately glared at the dead fish. You didn't come to find my good friend at all, you came after the night breeze. If it was before, Chinku would have been angry in an instant, but now she is a little jealous and helpless. Hehe, I want to pull everyone to eat bento together, don't be angry at that moment. Quote. The world of Xuan Temple thought that Chinku was angry that he cared too much about the night breeze, so he immediately comforted him. Chinku didn't say anything for a moment, just pulled the world of Xuan Temple back to the classroom. She didn't say where Nightwind was, because Nightwind had just said she was in trouble. Whether it was because he didn't want him to be disturbed, or because he was a little jealous, Chinku chose to be silent this time. Because the whole city is close to the mountains and forests, the mountain behind the school is also connected to a forest. There is only an iron gate leading to the back mountain, and when the night breeze comes here, the iron gate is open. Oh, does anyone go to the back mountain? Nightwind paid a little attention, then retracted his thoughts. He uses his super hearing, the sound of birds and insects. Even the wriggling sound of the earthworm in the ground echoed in his ears and was clearly visible. These noisy and piercing sounds, the night breeze can't sort out them in an instant. Little by little, he reined in his hearing, cut out the useless noises, and soon found an ant's nest. The next moment, a faint red light lit up in his pupils. ZZ. The ant's nest on the ground ignited a cluster of fire for a moment. Temperatures in the vicinity began to soar, and hundreds of ants turned to ash as the heat wave rolled in. Ding. Plunder obtains. Mighty organ ability, pheromone organ ability. Burning a nest of ants, the number of successful plunders repeated 12 times, including 3 useless abilities such as hatching eggs. Converting useless abilities, he only gained 6 energy points. And these 12 great forces only occupy a space in the panel warehouse, but this effect disappoints Nightwind. Might. After fusion, you can get the power of an ant. What a great power is the strength of an ant. The improvement brought by this fusion giant power is better than exposing it to 0.0 by yourself. The sun lifts more in 1 second. Later, Nightwind tried to fuse this great force, and every 2 of them could consume a little energy point and fuse it into an upgraded great force. After continuous fusion, a total of 17 energy points were consumed, and 2 new abilities appeared in front of his eyes. Giant Power Mutation. After fusion, you can obtain the power of a Brute Bull. Brute Force Talent. After fusion, you will get the talent Brute Force, which is as strong as an elephant and can be improved with exercise. It's evolved into an innate ability, but the more you go back, the more energy points you consume. Quote. After such practical operation, Yefeng has a rough idea of what the mechanism of panel fusion ability is. It was only fused 3 times that Great Force underwent a mutation and evolved into Brute Force. When Nightwind chooses to fuse into itself, this talent Brute Force is directly absorbed by Super Strength. He could only feel that he had gained about a ton of strength out of thin air, and the rest did not change. Compared to my own Kryptonian talent, the ability to kill weak creatures like insects is nothing short of a. Quote. Nightwind clenched his fists, and after this experiment, he gave up on killing the insects. If it were an ordinary person, maybe it would make sense. And for him now, this is not only a waste of time, but also useless. The fused abilities can no longer be converted into energy points, and are either discarded or placed in storage. Looking at this remaining Great Power ability, Nightwind chose to record this ability, and the Great Power ability immediately appeared on the ability map. Below is an icon that costs 200 energy points to exchange for this ability. If only she had the ability to transfer her abilities to others, she also needs some self-preservation. Quote. The night breeze whispered in a deep voice, patted his ass and stood up to go back. At this moment, he sensed a curious gaze focused on him, and then turned to look around the corner. Next to the tree, stood a young girl in a college uniform. A delicate and beautiful face, without the slightest dress, is pure without makeup. The body is beautiful and soft, and the proportions of the limbs are very perfect. Just the first time I saw her, Night Breeze couldn't help but calm down in my heart. Her temperament is gentle and elegant, which makes people can't help but get closer, but there is a sense of alienation that no one else can get close to. The long brown hair was not tied up, but draped casually over the shoulders and up to the waist. Her eyes, the color of her long hair, were also extraordinarily calm, but at this time there was a hint of curiosity. Why did you kill those ants? Reiko Natsumi made a crisp voice and asked the Night Breeze in confusion. When Nightwind stepped into the forest in the back mountain, she noticed the other party's presence. Then she saw the night wind, and it seemed that somehow it had unleashed the power of the invisible heat to burn the ant's nest. Nightwind glanced at Reiko Natsumi a few more times, and naturally replied, "It's nothing, it's just an experiment." Quote. Experiment. Reiko Natsumi subconsciously thought that the Nightwind was a person who had awakened superpowers, and ran to such a remote place to test her abilities. After all, she had done it before, so she felt a little sympathy. It's just that Natsumi Reiko didn't feel that she was on the same path as the Night Wind, so she gently reminded, "Get out of here, be careful of yukai." Quote. Are there yukai in this mountain? A flash of excitement flashed in Nightwind's eyes, and he was eager to go up and look for it. Reiko Natsumi didn't expect the Nightwind to react like this, and suddenly had a hint of wanting to tease him. She then pointed behind the night breeze and said with a smile, "Now on the canopy behind you, there is O." Hearing this, Nightwind turned his head to look in the direction of the canopy. But in his sight, nothing existed. "Oh, alas, I can't see it yet." Quote. Nightwind quickly retracted his gaze and shook his head helplessly. Seeing that Nightwind was this expression, Reiko Natsumi asked suspiciously, "Why don't you think I'm lying to you?" She once told her friends about the fact that she could see yukai. Her friends quickly moved away from her, as they didn't think it was a good thing to see yukai. Even at school, she didn't have a good reputation, and no one wanted to be close to her. That's why she likes to be alone, in this quiet and remote back mountain forest. Listening to Reiko Natsumi ask this, the night breeze returned her a sunny smile. "Why should I think you're lying to me, and I don't think you're going to lie." Quote. There is no reason to believe this, which makes Reiko Natsumi a little stunned. There used to be a few friends who were willing to believe her, but after a period of time, they also distanced themselves. Thinking of this, Reiko Natsumi's mood was a little low, and her tone returned to her previous calmness, and she whispered. "Since you don't think I'm lying to you, then go down, you might get lost if you go any further." Quote. If it were someone else, I'm afraid they would laugh at Reiko Natsumi's reminder that although this is a forest, the area is not large. If you stand a little higher, you can see the city below. To say that you are lost, it is simply nonsense. Nightwind doesn't think that Reiko Natsumi in front of her is lying, it should be that the yukai in the forest will trick people into getting lost. Now he hasn't seen the power of the yukai yet, and he doesn't want to mess around at will. Thank you for the reminder, I was going to go down too. Anyway, what is your name, senior sister, how about we get to know each other? Nightwind looked at Reiko Natsumi in a sincere tone, and she hesitated for a moment and replied, I'm Reiko Natsumi from Class B of the 3rd grade. Quote. Reiko Natsumi, a nice name. Then Natsumi-senpai, goodbye, I'm in the 1st grade D class, I like people to call me Night Breeze, if you're interested, we can talk again. Night Breeze didn't have the cheekiness to talk to her much, so it would be nice to get to know her a little now. I thought the person in front of me was very familiar, and I really knew him. Reiko Natsumi is a girl with powerful demonic powers who can see monsters. I don't know much about Natsumi Reiko Night Breeze, even if her current memory is clearly visible, there is very little knowledge about her. The only thing I know is that she has strong strength, and she made a friend's account later. But she was too gentle, and even though she had great strength, she didn't hurt anyone else. Reiko Natsumi may have committed suicide later, otherwise with her strength, it would be impossible to die easily. Night Breeze doesn't want a gentle and kind girl to end up like this, he wants to change her fate if he can. Nightwind turned and stood in place, bending her legs slightly under Reiko Natsumi's strange gaze. The power in his body continued to gather on his legs, and the rubble and dust around him were suspended irregularly. The muscles in the legs gradually tensed, and the gathered power also burst out at this moment. Bang! The trembling earth under the feet of the Nightwind exploded. For a while, the mountains shook, and smoke and dust rose. Reiko Natsumi almost didn't get on her feet and fell to the ground. When she looked at the place where the Nightwind had been again, there was a small hole in the ground. The dense cracks spread out in all directions, revealing the terrifying power that erupted in an instant. The figure of the Nightwind flew into the sky at this moment, and he didn't really fly, but jumped back to the school from this side of the forest in a big jump. At the moment of landing, he manipulated the biological force field, ignored inertia, and landed smoothly at the back of the teaching building. This scene really shocked Reiko Natsumi, and it was the first time she had seen anyone other than her with such terrifying power. Night Breeze. Is he the same kind of person as me? Reiko Natsumi muttered to herself, as if there was a light in her eyes. She hadn't seen any other supernatural powers before, and she had seen a few of the so-called demons. In her opinion, it is actually not as good as some powerful monsters, so she doesn't think there is anything unusual. And the power that Nightwind has just shown, in her opinion, can at least easily destroy ordinary demons and little monsters. Woohoo! It's a pleasure, but it's a pity that the amount of solar energy accumulated in the sun is too little, and the control of the biological force field is also average, so you have to practice diligently. Quote. Nightbreeze really wanted to fly, but he tried it and could only glide in the end. At present, his biological force field is not able to support his body to fly, and his foundation is still a little poor. However, the talent that had just been fused seemed to accelerate the growth of his strength. The Nightbreeze basking in the sun can clearly feel that the growth rate of his own strength is much faster. In the second half of the day's class, Nightbreeze simply didn't go to class. Talk to the world of Xuan Temple and ask her to help her ask for a leave. Nightbreeze then left the campus alone, ignoring whether the leave would be granted. Now he doesn't care about this little thing, and the knowledge in the classroom is of little use to him. Turn on the electromagnetic shielding. Nightwind's mind moved slightly, and the biological force field turned into energy and injected into Superman's suit. The black suit then unfolded an invisible magnetic field, enveloping his body. In the eyes of ordinary people, he is still in place, but if he is in the field of view of the camera, then his figure disappears. At the same time, under the focus of the electromagnetic barrier and the black suit, the absorption efficiency of solar radiation is also greatly improved. The black suit outlines his mermaid line and 8-pack abs, and the broad back makes him look powerful. The muscle lines under the suit are also angular, which fully demonstrates his strength and temperament. Passers-by on the street all looked sideways, the men looked jealous, and the women all had flattery in their eyes. At this time, Yefeng's mind was not here, he completely let go of the super hearing that he had not yet adapted to, and the super sense of smell was also directly used. In an instant, countless noisy voices poured into my mind, and all kinds of smells also came up at the same time. His brain was spinning, and he didn't react much because he had almost adapted to both abilities. After a few minutes, Nightwind locked on to the person he was looking for. In the city of Dormo, near the seaport, there are dense containers. In front of a black shipping container, the thug who had been driven away by the Nightbreeze carried a bag of money and took a deep breath and walked in. Inside the container, a group of people were waiting, and in addition to the thugs, there were other thugs who were carrying a bag of money at the same time. These are all the white money they collected, and some of it is usury and protection money. This is a stronghold of the Noshita Gumi in Tama City, and the president is Takeshi Noshita, who founded this yakuza from scratch. Many of the thugs have become part of the gang. For example, the gangsters I met in the Nightwind today only joined this gang not long ago. After counting the money collected, the president, who was the only one sitting with a chair in the room, nodded with satisfaction. Taketo Noshita, the chairman, wears glasses and looks like a man in his 40s and 50s. However, everyone present was in awe of him, and even more feared and adored the official gang members behind him. Except for the 5 who confiscated the money of the others has been counted, and it is not bad. Quote. A senior cadre quickly reported the situation to the president. Takeshi Noshita then pointed at the 5 who had confiscated the money, and with a wave of his hand, he asked them to be arrested. Only screams and 5 falling water sounds could be heard not far away, and everything calmed down after that. The gangster brothers present all broke out in cold sweat on their foreheads, glad that they survived. We, the Noshita group, don't need waste that can't even get money back. Today is also the day of the baptism of our Noshita group. From now on you will have the power of immortality and will always be loyal to the gang. The original Sven warrior Noshita has become extremely crazy at this moment. The eyes under the black glasses were bloodshot, and the pupils were blue and purple. And the senior operators and junior brothers behind him also showed fanatical expressions, and their faces became extremely distorted. In the dark shadow corner, a wriggling whisker of flesh was attached to Takeshi Noshita's back. The voice of Takeshi Noshita, which was originally there, gradually changed to coming from the shadows behind him. In the frightened eyes of the thugs, a huge and ugly figure appeared in front of everyone. The existence that resembles the upper body of a human but has no hands floats in the air, and in place of the head is a bare brain. It has a hideous human face embedded in its chest, and its lower body is wriggling, stinking internal organs. A large intestine tentacle sticks out and is connecting to Takeshi Noshita. The face on his chest spoke, and his ugly and terrifying body faced the few thugs in front of him. It is a zombie demon, and it is also a demon that hides and quietly develops its power. The so-called Takeshi Noshita is just one of its slaves. Just saying that he would give them demonic powers, these fools signed a contract with it, which is really stupid. Then they were transformed into zombies by their own power, that is, their slave dependents. Now it uses gangster recruitment to expand its power and power safely and harmlessly. And in the face of the zombie demon in front of them, this group of gangsters who just arrived were scared silly. They don't even know that their boss is already a slave to the devil. Don't. They struggled to run out, and the door of the container was long closed. In addition, the zombies that were hoarding in the shadows near the door also poured out at this moment. Each armed with a weapon, they unhurriedly surrounded everyone present. Looking at the approaching zombies in front of them, the gangsters present were completely desperate. And the zombie demon immediately ordered, "Kill them all and become your compatriots." Roar. The zombies, who had received orders from the zombie demons, let out a dull roar and rushed towards the thugs at a faster pace. More than 20 thugs faced the zombies of hundreds of people in front of them, and they had no power to resist at all. At this moment, a strange tearing sound suddenly interrupted the progress here. Click, click, tear. A ray of sunlight shone in, and in the frightened eyes of the remaining thugs, the figure of a teenager appeared at the door of the container. I saw the night breeze tear open the iron door of the container with his bare hands, and the action was like tearing a piece of A4 paper. After turning the small half area into a roller shutter door, Night Breeze looked up at the inside of the container. Yo, good afternoon, looks like you're pretty busy here. Sorry, I'm just looking for someone, and I accidentally disturbed you. Quote. Nightwind greeted him kindly, and only the crows were silent in response. The zombie demon was stunned for a moment, and the face on his chest instantly became extremely hideous. You're a demon hunter, aren't you? I hate demon hunters the most, chop him up and throw him in the trash. Hearing the words of the zombie demon, the remaining gangsters also rushed towards the night wind as if they had found a savior. The fastest one was the thug on the tram this morning, and he didn't recognize the night breeze in the backlight. Instead, he looked at the night wind at the door in surprise and shouted, Demon hunter, hurry up and save me, hurry up and clean up these zombies. The thug who hurried to Nightwind was greeted by a clenched fist. Poof. The thug looked down at his chest in pain and horror, and Nightwind's fist pierced his body. His chest, internal organs, and spine were all smashed by this punch. The entire human scaffold was only supported by little skin and flesh, and the bright red blood water sprayed out like a death. It's you. The thugs recognized Nightwind. Wasn't he the student who was inexplicably making trouble for himself this morning? But why? Why did you kill me? With this question, the thug quickly lost his breath. Ding. Power +1. Seeing that the gangster in his hand was out of breath, the Nightwind shook it casually. The gangster's entire body flew out more than 10 meters away in an instant, and his body was lying in the shadows in close numbers. The Nightwind didn't look back at the zombies and thugs in front of him. The gangsters are like encountering jackals, tigers and leopards. Even if the zombie hordes are behind them, they retreat again and again. Even the zombie demons who control the zombies are scared. It had never seen a demon hunter so ruthless to its own kind. Could it be that it had made a mistake? As soon as this thought appeared, it was left behind by the zombie demon. It doesn't matter who it is, as long as it's a human, then it will kill it. The zombies immediately rushed forward with their own weapons, and the thugs had no choice but to run towards the Nightwind in fear. I didn't expect to encounter a windfall. Nightwind grinned, and in the terrified gaze of the living people left on the field, the backlit Nightwind's eyes lit up with a scarlet shimmer. The next moment, this breathtaking red light turned into a beam of light and shot straight at them. ZZ. Scarlet beams of heat burst out of the Nightwind pupils, scorching the space. The high temperature of thousands of degrees mixed with a powerful impact force swept in an instant. Whether it was the zombies or the thugs, they could only watch the red beam of light shoot in, and their bodies didn't have time to react. I only heard a loud bang, and the head of a thug that my hot eyes touched first exploded like a watermelon slamming on the ground. Before the red and white puddle hit the ground, the scarlet beam sliced towards him. Boom. A body was cut apart, and the heads were blasted by the heat sight. Although the night wind only maintained the output of the thermal vision for a few seconds, it turned most of the zombies and all the thugs into a corpse on the ground. Ding. Kill 90 zombies and 5 humans. Loot to obtain. Rotten flesh organ ability X30. Unlock skill X1. Ding. Power plus 9. Zombies are all rubbish things, and the abilities they provide are rubbish to death. Quote. The ability of the rotten flesh. Nightwind just glanced at the name and didn't have the idea of continuing to understand. This thing is a complete side effect, and it's pretty much the same for someone else. It's just that I didn't expect to burst out a skill, but this unlocking is too useless. Directly recycle and convert it into 11 energy points. When Nightwind was concentrating on the clutter on the panel, the zombie demon over there was taken aback. It didn't expect that the night wind would almost kill its sight as soon as it heated, and it had accumulated for nearly 3 months. And seeing that the night wind suddenly stopped moving, the zombie demon thought that the night wind was out of strength, and immediately shouted, "Everyone, go up and eat him." The remaining 20 or 30 zombies also swarmed up, swooping towards the night wind like wild dogs. Nightwind retracted his attention and looked at the front of him, and the smile on his face grew brighter. He's kind of out of strength, and now it's his limit to maintain a substantial thermal gaze for a few seconds. Not, though. Nightwind looked at the iron box weighing at least 3 or 4 tons on the side, stabbed his hands into the box, and then used a little force. Drink. The 2-meter-high iron box was lifted by Nightwind with his bare hands and thrown forward. Boom. The huge iron box was like a bulldozer, crushing the zombies present into pulp in an instant. The speed of the iron box spinning in the air was extremely fast, and it directly hit the zombie demon in midair. The zombie demon had the power to resist, and immediately let out a miserable scream and was knocked out. The huge body slammed into the wall of the container, and the face on the chest was almost dented and turned into a puddle of flesh. How could it be? What's going on with this terrifying strange power? The zombie demon looked in horror at the approaching night wind, and manipulated the internal organs and intestines of his lower abdomen to shoot at him. It's disgusting. Quote. Looking at such a bloody large intestine flying in, even if the body can resist its impact, the night wind does not want to touch it. I don't know what was in it, and it's disgusting to think about. With a kick of his foot, he quickly dodged the zombie demon's attack. He picked up a machete on the ground, aimed it at the zombie demon and threw it over. Bang! The explosion of weapons tearing through the air echoed through the container. The small machete was like an armor-piercing bullet, shattering the brain on the zombie demon's neck in one fell swoop. The face on the chest was terrified, and he trembled and controlled his body to escape. Seeing this, Nightwind whispered in surprise, "Isn't the brain the core?" Quote. Immediately, he lifted a 2-meter-high iron box with both hands again, and slammed his feet on the ground and rushed to the zombie demon. In its terrified gaze, it picked up the iron box and smashed it down. Bang! Bang! The earth-shattering roar and the sound of flesh being crushed rang out at the same time. Ding! Thanks for watching.